The Colosseum of Prime was the largest structure ever built by any species in the known galaxy. It floated in the darkness of space like a small moon, its metal walls carved with the names of 10,000 years of champions. 3 million seats filled its interior, arranged in circles that rose toward the distant ceiling where artificial stars provided light. On this day, every seat was full. Beings from across the galaxy had traveled for months to witness this moment. They clicked their mandibles in excitement, their insect bodies pressing together in the lower sections. The massive sat in reinforced seats built to hold their weight, their 4 arms folded across their chests. Smaller species watched from floating platforms, their translator devices humming as they spoke to each other in 100 different languages. They had all come to see the same thing, the species to face the galactic combat trials. They had come to see the humans. In a small preparation room beneath the arena floor, Ambassador paced back and forth. He was 53 years old, a former university professor who had spent his entire career studying foreign cultures. Nothing in his education had prepared him for this. His gray hair was messy from running his hands through it, and his formal suit was wrinkled from 3 sleepless nights. On the other side of the room, sitting calmly on a metal bench She was 23 years old. Her black hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and she wore plain white clothes that the Galactic Council had provided. No armor, no padding, just thin fabric that would do nothing to stop a claw or a blade. She looked like she was waiting for a bus, not preparing to fight for the survival of her species. Stopped packing and stared at her. You understand what happens if you lose. Nodded. Earth gets quarantined. No contact with other species. No trade, no technology. We stay trapped on our planet until we die out or destroy ourselves. And you understand what you're facing. Of the 3 meters tall, 4 arms, has killed 67 opponents in trial combat, never been injured, never shown mercy. She recited the facts like she was reading from a school report. His claws can cut through ship armor. His species feels almost no pain. He has been training for combat since he could walk. Sat down heavily in a chair across from her. Then, why are you so calm? Was quiet for a moment. Through the walls, they could hear the distant roar of the crowd, 3 million voices hungry for blood. Did you know I was a veterinary student? She asked. Frowned. Yes, I read your file. You were in your 3rd year at a university in top of your class. You wanted to work with injured animals. I still do, she smiled slightly. When I was 12, I found a dog on the street. It had been hit by a car. Its back legs were broken and it was covered in blood. It was so scared and in so much pain that when I tried to help it, it bit me. She held up her left hand, showing a faint scar across her palm. It bit me 3 times before I could get it to the hospital. What happened to it? It lived. I visited it every day for 2 months while it healed. By the end, it would cry when I had to leave. Lowered her hand. That dog taught me something important. When a creature is hurting and afraid, it will attack anything that comes close. Not because it's evil, because it doesn't know any other way to survive. Leaned forward. Is not an injured dog, he's a killer. Is he? Looked at him with those calm eyes. I watched every recording of his fights, all 67 of them. Do you know what I noticed? What? He never attacks first. Not once. In every single fight, he waits for his opponent to move. He only kills in response. He only kills in defense. She paused. That's not a killer, Ambassador. That's a survivor. That's a creature who learned that the only way to stay alive is to be more dangerous than everything around him. Shook his head. Even if you're right, it doesn't matter. The trial rules are clear. You fight until one of you dies or submits. There's no room for philosophy in that arena. Maybe not. Stood up as a chime sounded, indicating that it was time. But there's room for choice. There's always room for choice. A door slid open, revealing a long tunnel that led to the arena floor. The roar of the crowd grew louder, and could see the black sand at the tunnel's end, glittering under the artificial starlight. He grabbed her arm before she could walk away. Why did you agree to this? When the lottery selected your name, you could have refused. Someone else would have volunteered. A soldier, an athlete, someone with a chance. She looked back at him, and for the first time he saw something in her eyes that wasn't calmness. It was determination, hard and bright like a diamond. Because I watched those recordings, Ambassador. I watched 100 years of trials, species after species, all trying to prove their worth through violence, all failing. Even the ones who won their fights eventually lost their wars. The won their trial and then spent 3 centuries fighting border conflicts. The won theirs and now their population is half of what it was. Victory in the arena doesn't lead to peace. It just leads to more fighting. She gently removed his hand from her arm. Humanity has spent its entire existence trying to prove that we're strong. We built weapons that could destroy our whole planet. We fought wars that killed millions. We did everything that the galaxy is asking us to do now. We proved our strength over and over again. And it almost killed us. She turned toward the tunnel. I'm not going into that arena to prove that humans are strong. The galaxy already knows we're strong. They've seen our ships. They've scanned our weapons. They know what we're capable of. The crowd's roar reached a fever pitch as she started walking. I'm going to prove that we're strong enough to choose something else. Watched her walk down the tunnel, her small figure growing smaller against the bright light of the arena. He wanted to call out to her, to tell her to come back, to find another way. But the words wouldn't come. Because deep down, in a place he didn't want to examine too closely, he understood what she was doing. He had studied Earth's history. He had read about the wars, the genocides, the weapons that could turn cities to ash in seconds. He knew what humanity was capable of when it embraced violence. And he knew that was right. The galaxy didn't need to see another species prove it could kill. The galaxy had enough killers. What it needed, what it had never had in 10,000 years of combat trials, was someone brave enough to refuse. The tunnel door closed behind her and was left alone in the preparation room. On the wall, a screen showed the arena floor, where 3 million spectators watched a small human girl walk out onto the black sand. She looked like nothing. She looked like prey. But as watched her stand in the center of that ancient killing ground, her head held high and her hands empty, he felt something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. The black sand crunched beneath his feet as she walked to the center of the arena. It was made of volcanic glass, ground down over centuries by the footsteps of champions and the bodies of the fallen. They had chosen this material specifically because blood showed so clearly against it, bright colors spreading across the darkness like flowers blooming in a dead garden. She stopped in the middle of a white circle painted on the ground. This was where all combatants were required to begin. From here, she could see everything. The towering walls covered in ancient carvings, the 3 million spectators rising up in endless rows, and the artificial stars burning overhead. It was beautiful in a terrible way. Across from her, on the opposite side of the arena, a massive door began to open. The crowd fell silent for just a moment, then erupted into cheers so loud that felt them in her chest like a second heartbeat. Of the stepped onto the sand. He was everything the reports had described and more. 3 meters of muscle and scar tissue, his 4 arms hanging at his sides like weapons waiting to be used. His face was flat and wide, with 4 small black eyes that reflected the starlight like pools of oil. Old wounds crossed his body in pale lines, trophies from 67 battles against the deadliest creatures the galaxy could produce. He walked toward her slowly, each step shaking the ground. They were a heavy species, their bones dense and their muscles thick. They had evolved on a world with crushing gravity, where everything was a threat and only the strongest survived. Stopped at his own white circle, 20 meters away from, his 4 eyes fixed on her, and she saw something flicker in them. Confusion, maybe, or curiosity. The Grand Arbiter's voice echoed through the arena, broadcast from speakers embedded in the walls. It was Arbiter, the ancient whose white carapace showed her extreme age. Combatants have entered the arena. The rules of trial are as follows. Combat continues until death or submission. No external weapons are permitted. No outside interference is permitted. Victory grants the winner's species full membership in the Galactic Council. Defeat results in permanent quarantine of the losers. The crowd chittered and roared and clicked, each species showing excitement in its own way. Combatants, are you prepared? His voice rumbled across the sand like distant thunder. I am prepared. 3,000,000 eyes turned too. She stood in her thin white clothes, her hands empty, her body still. She looked up at the Arbiter's platform high above and spoke in a clear voice. I am prepared. Arbiter raised one limb, then let the trial begin. Her limb fell. Charged. The distance between them was 20 meters. For a creature of his size and speed, this was nothing. His 4 legs drove him forward like a living tank, each stride covering 3 meters. His upper arms reached out, claws extended, ready to grab and tear. His lower arms pulled back, preparing to strike. The sand exploded behind him in a black wave. Did not move. The crowd's cheers turned to screams of anticipation. This was the moment they had waited for. This was the blood they had traveled across the galaxy to see. The tiny human standing frozen as death came for her was 5 meters away. 3 meters. 1 meter. His claw shot forward, aimed at her throat. It would have been a quick death, quicker than most. They were brutal but efficient. They did not enjoy suffering. They simply did what needed to be done. The claw stopped. Felt the wind of it pass her face. She felt the heat of his body, so close that she could have reached out and touched his chest. But she did not move. She did not flinch. She simply stood there, looking up into his 4 black eyes. The arena fell silent. 3,000,000 beings stopped breathing. The clicking and roaring and chattering died away until the only sound was the soft whisper of sand settling back to the ground. His claw trembled, centimeters from skin. His arm shook with the effort of holding it still. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to complete the motion, to end this mockery of a fight, to do what he had been trained to do since birth. But he didn't. Why? His voice was barely a whisper, so quiet that only could hear it. Why don't you run? She looked at him calmly. Would it matter if I did? His eyes blinked, one pair after the other. No, I would catch you. I would kill you. Running would only delay it. Then why would I run? She tilted her head slightly. What would be the point of dying tired and afraid? His claw dropped a few centimeters, then stopped again. You should fight. You should try to hurt me. All the others did. Did it help them? No. Then why should I do the same thing? His voice was soft and steady. You've killed 67 opponents. Every single one of them tried to fight you. Every single one of them failed. If fighting doesn't work, maybe it's time to try something else. The crowd was beginning to stir, confusion rippling through the stands like wind through grass. This was not how trials were supposed to go. The combatants were supposed to fight. They were supposed to bleed. They were supposed to die or kill. They were not supposed to talk. His claw dropped further until it was level with his chest. His 4 eyes never left his face. You are trying to trick me, he said. This is some kind of human strategy. You are waiting for me to lower my guard. If I was going to attack you, I would need a weapon. Do you see one? He didn't answer, but his eyes flicked down to her empty hands. I am not here to fight you, she said his name carefully, trying to pronounce it correctly. I am not here to trick you. I am just here to stand. Why? It was such a simple question, such a small word, but heard something in it that made her heart ache. This creature, this warrior who had spent his entire life killing, was asking her something that no one had ever asked him. Why? Why do we fight? Why do we kill? Why is blood the only way to prove our worth? Because someone has to be first, she said. Someone has to show that there's another way. Someone has to prove that strength isn't just about destruction. She looked up at him, at his body and his trembling claws and his confused eyes. I think you already know that. I think you've known it for a long time. His upper arms fell to his sides, his lower arms unclenched. For the first time in his life, Avda stood before an enemy and did not fight. What do you want from me? He asked. Smiled, a small, sad smile that held no victory in it. I want you to sit down, she said. I want you to talk to me. I want you to tell me about your 67 fights, and I want you to tell me the truth. What truth? She reached out slowly and placed her hand against his chest, her small palm resting over the place where his heart beat. I want you to tell me if you ever wanted to kill any of them, or if you just didn't know how to stop. The crowd exploded in chaos. 3 million voices screaming for blood, for action, for something that made sense, but neither combatant moved. They just stood there in the black sand, human, and while the galaxy watched and wondered what it was seeing. The chaos in the arena lasted for nearly an hour. Arbiters rushed back and forth across their elevated platforms, their translator devices crackling as they argued in a dozen languages. The delegation demanded immediate intervention. The representatives sat in stunned silence, unable to process what they were seeing. Species that had fought wars against each other found themselves agreeing for the first time in centuries. This was wrong. This was broken. This was not how the trials worked. But through all of it and did not move. They stood in the center of the black sand, speaking quietly to each other while the galaxy screamed around them. The arena's sound systems had been designed to carry the noise of combat to every seat, but they had been turned off when it became clear that no combat was happening. Now, 3 million spectators could only watch as two figures talked. It was, the historians would later write, the longest hour in the history of the galactic combat trials. Finally, Grand Arbiter appeared on the main platform, her ancient white carapace gleaming under the artificial stars. She raised one limb, and the crowd slowly fell silent. Combatants, her voice echoed across the arena, the trial has begun. You must fight. Looked up at her. With respect, Grand Arbiter, the rules say we must remain in this arena until death or submission. They do not say we must attack each other. Mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of deep frustration in her species. The intent of the rules is clear. Intent is not law, replied. You've spent 10,000 years building these trials on precise rules. Every word has been debated and refined. If you wanted to require combat, you would have written it that way. But you didn't. You wrote that we must stay here until one of us dies or gives up. Nothing more. The crowd stirred. This was not just a delay anymore. This was a challenge to the very foundation of everything the trials represented. Spoke for the first time since the Arbiter's arrival. His deep voice carried across the sand without amplification. She is correct. I have read the rules many times. There is no requirement to attack. There is only a requirement to remain. You would take her side. His voice was sharp with disbelief. You are a champion of the you have killed 67 opponents. You would throw away your honor for this. This nothing. Something changed in his posture. His forearms tightened at his sides, and his black eyes narrowed. I would ask the Grand Arbiter to choose her words more carefully, he said. This human has shown more courage than any opponent I have ever faced. She walked into this arena knowing she could not win a fight against me. She stood before my claws without flinching. She spoke to me without fear. His voice dropped lower, becoming almost dangerous. She is not nothing. She is the first warrior I have met who deserves my respect. The delegation began to stir. This was unprecedented. Their champion, their greatest killer, was defending an enemy, was praising weakness, was refusing to fight. Arbiter was silent for a long moment. Then she asked a question that no arbiter had ever asked before. What would you have me do? Stepped forward. Let us continue. The rules say we must stay here until death or submission. They do not say how long that must take. Let us stay. Let us talk. Let the galaxy watch. Watch what? Two enemies standing in sand. Two people, corrected gently. Not enemies, not champions, just two people from two different worlds trying to understand each other. She spread her arms to indicate the massive crowd surrounding them. Isn't that what the Galactic Council was supposed to be? A place where different species could come together. A place where understanding could replace violence. The crowd's muttering grew louder, but it was different now. There was confusion in it, yes, but also something else. Curiosity, interest, a strange, unexpected desire to see what would happen next. Arbiter turned to consult with her fellow arbiters. The discussion lasted only a few minutes before she returned to face the arena. The rules do not prohibit this, she announced. The trial will continue. The combatants will remain in the arena until the conditions for victory are met. The council will not interfere. She turned and walked away, her ancient body moving slowly across the platform. Just before she disappeared from view, she paused and looked back at. I do not understand you, human, she said, but I find that I want to. Then she was gone, and were alone again in the center of the black sand. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The crowd's noise faded to a background hum as they looked at each other, really looked, for the first time. Sit with me, said. She lowered herself to the sand, crossing her legs beneath her. Tell me about your first fight. Hesitated. Standing was a position of strength. Sitting was vulnerability. But after a moment, he folded his four legs beneath him and sat across from her, his massive body settling into the volcanic glass with a soft crunch. His name was, he said quietly. He was from a species called they are extinct now, too many losses in the trials, too few births to replace them. He was young like me, scared like me. Neither of us wanted to be there. What happened? He attacked, I defended, he died. His four eyes stared at the sand between them. It took less than 30 seconds. The crowd cheered. My family was honored. I was given medals and titles and privileges. And you? I went back to my room and didn't eat for 3 days. He looked up at her. No one asked me how I felt. No one asked if I was okay. They only asked when my next fight would be. Nodded slowly. The 67 you killed, did any of them try to talk to you first? No, they all attacked. Some immediately, some after circling for a while, but they all attacked eventually. Why do you think that is? Was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with something that might have been grief. Because they were told they had no choice, because their species needed them to fight, because the rules said there was no other way. He looked at her with those four black eyes, because no one ever showed them that they could refuse. Around them, 3 million spectators leaned forward in their seats. The arena that had been built for blood was being used for something it had never known. Conversation, understanding, peace. And somewhere in the stands, hidden among the masses, beings began to wonder, what if the human was right? What if there was another way? What if all this time, the only thing they needed to end the violence was the courage to stop? The first day passed without either combatant rising from the sand. Food and water were brought to them by small service drones. The rules allowed for this, as trials could sometimes last for days when opponents were evenly matched. But never before had the drones delivered meals to enemies sitting peacefully together, sharing their provisions like old friends. Ate slowly, watching as consumed his rations with mechanical efficiency. His species needed twice as much food as humans, their dense muscles requiring constant fuel. Tell me about Earth, he said between bites. I have read the reports, but reports never tell the truth. So she told him. She told him about the oceans that covered most of her world, about the mountains that touched the clouds, about the forests that had survived millions of years of change. She told him about the animals she had studied, the dolphins that sang to each other across miles of water, the elephants that mourned their dead, the dogs that had chosen to live alongside humans 10,000 years ago. "We are not alone on our planet," she explained. "We share it with millions of other species. We have learned that everything is connected, that when we hurt the world, we hurt ourselves." Listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. "There has no such diversity," he finally said. "Our ancestors killed everything that competed with them. They saw other species as threats to be eliminated. By the time we developed space travel, we were the only complex life remaining." "Do you think that was a mistake?" "Yes." The word came quickly, without hesitation. "We have conquered dozens of worlds, but we do not know how to live on them. We can only survive in controlled environments, eating processed food, breathing filtered air. We won the war against our planet, but we lost something else." His four eyes blinked slowly. "I do not know what to call it. We do not have a word for it." "Connection," suggested. "Belonging, the feeling that you are part of something larger than yourself." "Yes." He looked at her with something like wonder. "How do you know this? How do you have words for things we cannot even imagine?" "Because we almost made the same mistake." She drew a pattern in the sand with her finger. "There was a time when humans killed everything they feared. We hunted species to extinction. We poisoned our water and our air. We built weapons that could destroy our entire world in hours. But you stopped. Some of us did. Enough of us did." She looked up at him. "We realized that strength without wisdom is just destruction. We realized that being able to kill everything doesn't mean you should. We learned, slowly, painfully, with many mistakes, that the strongest thing a creature can do is choose not to fight." The second day began with a visitor. Grand Arbiter descended from her platform on a floating disc, her ancient body folding carefully as she settled onto the sand beside them. The crowd fell silent, watching this unprecedented event. "I could not sleep," she said too. "For the first time in 200 years, I could not sleep. Your words kept repeating in my mind." "Which words?" "You said the Galactic Council was supposed to be a place of understanding, a place where violence could be replaced with communication." The mandibles clicked softly. "I have served as Grand Arbiter for 60 years. I have overseen 412 trials. I have watched 3 species go extinct because they could not produce a champion strong enough to survive." She turned her head toward. "And I have watched the winners suffer almost as much as the losers. Victory does not bring peace. It only brings more fighting, more trials, more blood." Nodded slowly. "I have served my people as champion for 40 years. Every victory was supposed to bring honor. Instead, it only brought more expectations, more demands, more killing." "Then why do we continue?" asked. The question seemed to cause her physical pain. "Why do we keep holding these trials if they serve no purpose?" "Because no one has ever suggested stopping," said simply. "Because the rules have existed for so long that everyone assumes they cannot be changed. Because it is easier to keep doing something terrible than to admit that it was wrong." The third day brought more visitors. One by one, representatives from various species made their way down to the arena floor. They came with questions, with doubts, with stories of their own. A young, one of the last survivors of his dying species, sat with them and wept as he described watching his brother fall to a champion decades ago. A scientist shared her research on the psychological damage caused by trial combat, data that had been suppressed for generations because it challenged the system. And through it all and remained in the center of the sand, listening, speaking, witnessing. The galaxy was beginning to change. It did not happen all at once. There were protests from the traditional factions, demands that the trial be concluded properly, threats of withdrawal from species that had built their entire cultures around combat. But there were also other voices, quieter at first, then growing louder. Voices that asked, what if? What if strength could mean something other than violence? What if honor could come from mercy instead of killing? What if the trials could become something new? On the evening of the third day, as the artificial stars dimmed to simulate night, turned to with a question that had been building in him for 72 hours. What happens now? He asked. The trial cannot continue forever. Eventually, something must be decided. Looked at him calmly. What do you want to happen? I do not know. He stared at his four clawed hands, weapons that had taken 67 lives. For 40 years I knew exactly who I was. I was a champion, a killer, a warrior. That was my purpose, my identity, my reason for existing. And now I am sitting in sand with a human who weighs less than my arm, and I am realizing that everything I was taught was a lie. He made a sound that might have been a laugh, though it held no joy. They do not train us to handle this. We do not have words for doubt. We do not have rituals for change. Reached out and placed her small hand on his massive arm. Maybe that's what you can bring back to them, she said. Not victory or defeat, something better, something that your species has never had before. What? She smiled at him, a real smile, warm and genuine. A new word, a new idea, the possibility that there is more to life than fighting. Above them, 3 million spectators watched and waited. The arena that had been built for death was becoming something else. A place of birth. A place where new ideas could grow. And in the darkness between the stars, other species who had never dared to hope began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, the humans had found something worth fighting for. Something worth not fighting for. On the morning of the fourth day, of the rose to his feet, the arena fell silent instantly. 3 million beings held their breath, waiting to see what the champion would do. Had he finally grown tired of talking? Had his warrior instincts returned? Would he end this strange trial the only way his species knew how? Remained seated, looking up at him without fear. She had known this moment would come. She had been waiting for it. Turned to face the Grand Arbiter's platform, his 4 arms held rigidly at his sides. I have something to say, he announced. His voice carried across the black sand, amplified by the arena's systems to reach every seat. I ask that my words be recorded and transmitted to all member species of the Galactic Council. Arbiter appeared on her platform, her white carapace gleaming in the artificial morning light. Speak, champion of the galaxy is listening. Was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. When he spoke again, his voice was steady and clear. I have been a champion for 40 years. I have killed 67 opponents in trial combat. I have brought honor to my species and glory to my family. I have done everything that was asked of me, and I have done it well. He paused. And I am tired. The crowd stirred, but no one spoke. They were watching something they had never seen before, a champion showing weakness, showing humanity, showing truth. I was trained from birth to fight. I was told that combat was the highest purpose I could achieve. I was taught that mercy was weakness, that kindness was failure, that the only way to earn respect was through blood. His 4 eyes swept across the arena, taking in the millions of faces watching him. I believed these things. I had no reason not to. Everyone around me believed them too. He looked down at, still sitting peacefully in the sand. Then I met this human, this small, fragile creature who should have died in the first second of our fight. She had no weapons, she had no armor, she had no strength or speed or claws. By every measure my species uses, she was worthless. She was nothing. His voice grew stronger. And yet she defeated me. The crowd erupted in confusion, but continued speaking, his words cutting through the noise. She defeated me without throwing a single punch. She defeated me by refusing to fight. She showed me something that no opponent has ever shown me before. She showed me that there was a choice. She showed me that I did not have to kill. She showed me that 67 deaths were not victories. They were failures. Failures of imagination. failures of courage, failures to see any other way. He turned back to face the Arbiter's platform. I stand before this arena, before the Galactic Council, before all the species who have fought and died in these trials for 10,000 years, and I say this: we were wrong, all of us. We built a system that rewarded violence and punished compassion. We created a tradition that turned our best and into killers. We told ourselves that this was strength, that this was honor, that this was the only way to prove our worth. His forearms rose, spreading wide to encompass the entire arena. But the only thing we proved was that we were afraid, afraid to try something new, afraid to show weakness, afraid to admit that maybe, just maybe, there was a better way. He lowered his arms and spoke the words that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. I submit. The arena exploded. Some species screamed in outrage. The delegation roared with fury, their champion's submission bringing shame upon their entire civilization. But other voices rose to meet them, voices of approval, of support, of something that sounded almost like relief. Grand Arbiter raised her limb for silence. It took several minutes, but eventually the crowd settled. Of the has submitted, she announced. By the rules of trial combat, the human called is the victor. Her species, humanity, has earned full membership in the Galactic Council. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was different, softer, almost wondering. But I do not believe that is what we have witnessed here today. We have not witnessed a victory or a defeat. We have witnessed something far more important. We have witnessed the beginning of change. Rose to her feet and walked to stand beside. They were an impossible pair, the massive warrior and the small human girl, standing together on the black sand where so many had died. The trials were created to test strength, said, but you chose the wrong test. You measured our ability to destroy when you should have measured our ability to build. You rewarded violence when you should have rewarded understanding. You asked us to prove our worth through blood when you should have asked us to prove it through compassion. She looked up at, who looked back at her with something like gratitude in his 4 black eyes. Humanity has spent its entire existence learning this lesson. We have fought more wars than any species here. We have built more weapons. We have come closer to destroying ourselves than any civilization in this galaxy. But we survived, not because we were the strongest, because we learned to be kind. She turned to face the crowd, her small voice carrying across the arena. That is what humanity offers to the Galactic Council, not our weapons, not our soldiers, not our ability to kill. We offer you what we learned through thousands of years of suffering, that mercy is not weakness, that compassion is not failure, that the strongest thing any creature can do is choose not to fight. Arbiter bowed her ancient head. The Council will consider your words, human, and I believe for the first time in my long life that things may truly change. The arena began to empty, but remained standing together on the black sand. Around them, the carvings on the walls showed 10,000 years of champions, 10,000 years of blood, 10,000 years of violence celebrated as virtue. "What will you do now?" asked. Was quiet for a long moment. Then he made that sound again, the one that might have been a laugh. "I do not know. I have never not known before. My entire life has been planned, scheduled, controlled. Every day had a purpose. Every action had a meaning." He looked down at her. "Now I am free, and I do not know what to do with freedom." Smiled. "That's okay. No one does at first, but you'll figure it out. You'll find something new to believe in, something new to fight for." "Will you help me?" The question surprised her. She looked up at the massive warrior, at the creature who had killed 67 opponents, at the champion who had surrendered everything to stand beside her. "Yes," she said, "I will." They walked out of the arena together, human, and past the crowds of confused and amazed spectators, past the delegations arguing about what they had witnessed, past the historians already beginning to record this moment for posterity. Behind them, the black sand remained empty. The blood that should have stained it was never spilled. The death that should have occurred never came. And in its place, something new had been born. Hope, understanding, mercy. The galaxy had expected blood. What they saw instead was a human girl's compassion, offered freely to an enemy who did not know how to accept it. And that, the historians would write, was the moment everything changed. That was the day the humans taught the galaxy how to be strong.